We do have a very fine picture of the Forum here, and I wonder whether you can tell what kind of columns there are on the structures that have been rebuilt. Our next essential question is about Republican government. It asks, how was the Republican government organized? The leaders of the Roman Republic established a tripartite government. This type of government has three branches. Tripartite, three-part, three branches. Do these sound familiar? Executive, legislative, and judicial. The executive branch enforces a country's laws. The legislative branch makes the laws, and the judicial branch interprets the laws in court. Legislative and judicial. The legislative branch of Roman government included the Senate and the assemblies. The Senate was a powerful body of 300 members that advised Roman leaders. Most senators were patricians. The assemblies were mainly made up of plebeians. Their representatives protected the rights of plebeians. The judicial branch consisted of 8 judges who served for 1 year. They oversaw the courts and governed the provinces. Executive. 2 consuls led Rome's executive branch. They commanded the army and directed the government for 1 year. Each consul had the power to veto or overrule the other. In times of crisis, the consuls could choose a dictator, a leader with absolute power, to rule in their place for a limited time. Around 460 BC, a man named Cincinnatus was made dictator to defend Rome from attack. According to legend, he defeated the enemy and returned power to the consuls in 16 days. How do we have Cincinnatus in our world today? Think of Ohio. Here's a picture of the Senate. And we have a very useful text box, which does not all fit on this page at one time. You do have a copy of this PDF also in Schoology. With the branches, though, we compare Rome and the United States, and this really is very important. Our founding fathers borrowed very heavily from the Roman form of democracy when they drew up our Constitution. There are some differences, though. We have 2 consuls in Rome, and we have 1 president in the United States. The consuls in Rome only ruled or were in power for 1 year, whereas in the United States, a president serves for 4 years. There is a Senate of 300 members. Caesar later raised that up to 600 members. That Senate advised the consuls, and the assemblies made the laws. Here we have only 100 members in our Senate, but their duties are similar. They advise the president, and they make laws. With the Roman assemblies, that's where the laws are made, and similarly in the House, we have laws. So the Senate and the House in the United States both approve laws, whereas the Senate in Rome set policies, but the laws were made in the Assembly. The 12 tables were the basis of the Roman legal code in the same way that we have a constitution. In Rome, they had 8 judges overseeing the government and ruling the provinces. In the U.S., we have 9 justices, so that's close. And our justices work on interpreting the Constitution and law. So it's a little bit different, the responsibilities of the judiciary. Legacy of Roman law, you should have an idea. The U.S. government adopted several features of the Roman Republic. You can compare the 2 systems in the chart above. Like the Roman government, the United States has a tripartite system. The U.S. system of checks and balances makes sure that one branch of the government doesn't have too much power. This system is like the veto, which limited the power of Roman consuls. In addition, like Rome, The United States has a written constitution on which its government is based. Citizenship is also an important part of a republican government. In the Roman Republic, only free adult males were citizens and could vote. Only these citizens enjoyed the protection of Roman law. They were also expected to perform civic duties. That means they were expected to serve their nation. Cincinnatus showed the civic duty by defeating the enemy and stepping down from power. American citizens show civic duty by voting, taking part in jury duty, and paying taxes. Now you need to pause and go back to the essential question, which asks, how is the government organized? I think that you'll find the text box helps you largely in creating your answer to that question. Moving on, the Republic expands. How did Rome expand? For hundreds of years after the founding of the Republic, Rome expanded its territories. By the 300s BC, the Romans dominated central Italy. Eventually, they conquered the Etruscans to the north and the Greek city-states to the southeast. By 275 BC, all of the Italian peninsula was under Roman control. In general, Rome did not impose harsh rule on conquered peoples. The Republic offered Roman citizenship to most of the conquered peoples and allowed them to govern themselves. In return, they had to pay taxes and provide soldiers for the Roman army. That was a very good idea, to take in people and allow them to continue their own ways. The Punic Wars. Rome needed these soldiers to fight the Punic Wars, which began in 264 BC. The Punic Wars were a series of 3 long wars against Carthage, a rich trading city in North Africa. Maybe we should go back to the map. A rich trading city in North Africa. Back to the map. Here. Here is Carthage. So it's really not that very far away. The scale on this map is 500 miles, so it's not that far away. I went too far, sorry. So, Carthage is a rich trading city in North Africa. Rome won each of the Punic Wars, but almost lost the second. Hannibal, a general from Carthage, crossed the Alps with a herd of elephants and nearly captured Rome. The Roman general Scipio defeated him in 202 BC. In 146 BC, Rome finally captured and destroyed Carthage. By the end of the wars, Roman territory extended from Spain to Greece. Scipio is very famous for his plan to conquer the Carthaginians, and they don't really mention that here. What Scipio did was to start an attack in Carthage, which meant that the Carthaginians had to go back home in order to defend themselves there, and that is how Scipio defeated them. That tactic has gone down in history and is well known. So, there is the map of the wars. And Hannibal did have a base of operations in Spain. So the Carthaginians had some good territory before they were defeated. The effects of expansion. The Roman conquerors brought back great wealth and many slaves. They bought enough large estates and farmed them with slave labor. They bought large estates and farmed them with slave labor. But because many small farmers couldn't compete, they lost their farms. As a result, unemployment and poverty increased. The gap between rich and poor grew wider. This, in turn, produced more anger and tension between the classes. So, How did Rome expand? We have the way they treated conquered peoples, and we have the defeat of the Carthaginians, which left them with how much territory? Rome becomes an empire. What led to conflict in Rome? Well, I believe you've been led to imagine what led to conflict in Rome. Do you remember? As Rome expanded, many wealthy Romans neglected their civic duties. They thought only about getting even more power and wealth. This increased the differences between rich and poor. As a result, the threat of uprisings grew. Reform fails. Reformers tried to relieve these problems. They wanted to break up the huge estates and give land to the poor. Have we heard about that before? Solon, Cleisthenes. But the wealthy landowners in the Senate felt threatened. They opposed the reforms and had the reformers killed. Here is the Colosseum. That's a possible topic for your project. Civil War. At the same time, generals who had conquered other lands became ambitious for power at home. They hired poor farmers to serve under them as soldiers. Increasingly, these soldiers shifted their loyalty from the Republic to their general. The general's desire for power led to conflict. Eventually, civil war broke out. A civil war is an armed conflict between groups within the same country. On one side were the generals who supported the cause of the plebeians. On the other side were generals who were backed by patricians and senators. So each group had their favorite general. A general named Marius fought for the plebeians, while a general named Sulla for the patricians. The struggle went on for years. Finally, in 82 BC, the patricians won. Sulla took power and became a dictator. He was a nasty dictator. He did horrific things. All right, going back then to this essential question, what led to conflict in Rome? There were two kinds of things, really. Divisions among the people and the generals,